$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES broadcast with your hosts, Soul Blazer and George.
Hello, welcome to Super NES Podcast, episode number 126 this time. Thank you as always very much for listening to it. We appreciate it. I am Greg, he is George.
That's me.
And we're picking, well actually, no, we didn't pick, this was picked for us. This is a more obscure game recovering like this episode. It is the game Super Widget. Which is a super-sized sequel, I suppose you could call it, to an NES game, which is in turn based off a cartoon. George, I know this is a platformer, so I apologize in advance.
You better. I'm kidding.
I want to thank Daniel, one of our Patreon backers, for suggesting this game. He said he wanted to cover it because he was he was a target audience for this game when it came out in the early 90s. He was a kid, he watched the cartoon, he played the game, and like a lot of people, looking online to read, that's a pretty popular theme. Going online doing research of this and looking at comments, whatnot. A lot of folks have fond memories of this game playing as a kid. So it's one of those definitely kid nostalgia heavy games out there. So obviously George and I have not played this game yet. Before the podcast. My excuse is that I was way past kid age, like the cartoon came out. And George, despite being at the right age, didn't see this. I don't know how much wide coverage the show got. Maybe not. Syndication may not have been all that thorough, but anyway, what's this cartoon? What's the cartoon that you guys are talking about? Just like I hear you saying. Well, the game's based upon a cartoon called Widget the World Watcher, which was out from 1990 to 1992, if I remember, 3 seasons. It was created by the same guy who created Voltron, Peter Caffrey. And it's also an environmentally themed cartoon show a la Captain Planet. So the cartoon basically covers the exploits of the alien Widget as he goes to Earth and tries to save various species and do various environmentally friendly activities to help the planet out. So
wow, he's doing better than the actual inhabitants of Earth.
Yes, exactly. There's some very good look at this voice credit list. There's some very good people who contribute their talents to the show. For example, Widget himself, is voiced by Rusty Taylor, who also did the voices of Minnie Mouse and also Simpsons character Martin, for a long time. She just passed away this year, as a matter of fact. So.
Oh wow.
Jim Cummings, Cree Summer, Dana Hill, a lot of well-known voice actors contributed their work to this show. So anyway, the show was popular enough, so that the idea came out to make a game based upon it. Atlas got the rights to the series. We've already covered Atlas in past episodes. I won't spend too much time talking about it. So the NES game was a late NES game, 1992, which is probably why many people didn't see it. Because even though the show had many good games coming out of the system that late, by 92, 94, a lot of people had moved on. So late release NES games were often budget titles or small runs or whatnot. So The NES game is very similar to the Super NES game. The Super NES game is just like a sequel, really. The plot's different, the engine's different. The mechanics are pretty much the same across like both games. Just basically both games feature like platforming action. We have like hit bar, like a life bar, and also like an energy bar. Boss fights in the every stage, and what makes the game unique, tries to make it stand out from some of the other platformers. Again, following what he can do on the show, he can change. A Widget can mutate, transform into various other creatures. During the course of the game, he finds certain power-ups, and strategic use about transforming to certain characters at certain times is like very key to making through the game. I was reminded a lot about like Little Nemo, Dream Master, with that aspect. Having to change characters at certain points to make it through stages.
I didn't even make that connection. That's very good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because Little Nemo is a game Little Nemo is a game I enjoy a lot. So, but the NES game is also infamous, like being a very like buggy game. Because the NES version of the game was farmed out to a small Japanese company called Graphic Research to make, and probably because this was a late NES game, and Atlas is like, nobody just still care too much about it outside the kids. There's some very heavy bugs in the game, which also makes me wonder if Nintendo's quality assurance department was also sleeping at the switch when this game came through. You were able to move through walls by doing certain glitches. You were able to crash the game at certain points if you do something in the right order. Or you can also like warp to the next room of a level like if you do a certain sequence. So because of all those bugs, this game's actually very popular. It's a very popular target for speedrunners. So, there is that.
Hey, they thought it was an interesting enough game to release anyway.
Yes. And interesting enough, like to make a sequel to Super NES. Except this time, Atlas themselves handled the actual development of the game themselves. Side note: this is the last platformer game that Atlas themselves developed. They were well known in their early days for making a bunch of platformer games. This is the last one they published. They published under their banner. They moved on to mostly RPGs after this point. So, also curious enough that even though this game was created by a Japanese team, the game did not get released in Japan, probably because the cartoon was not released in Japan. It was released in North America on the last day of December, 1993, very last day of the year, and also got a PAL release for the following year, because the cartoon was available in Europe also, like through syndication. So, the game itself, like I said before, it's a pretty standard platformer game outside the mechanic of being able to transform into different characters. There's some pretty interesting characters that Widget can turn into, like this game. There's like octopus creatures and like mutated cats and like weird robot-like guys that shoot bullets. That's the most unique part of this game, I think.
But if you're shooting bullets, you're wasting the Earth's resources.
Well, he's an alien, so let's just say he's using alien energy.
Fine.
There's also the very typical Mario-esque mechanic of that you can also collect Widget tokens as you go through the stages. You counter those, give you an extra life. In his natural state, Widget, it's also important to note that his natural state, Widget can only take one hit before he dies. However, if you're changed to another creature, you're able to take more hits, and it's particularly critical boss fights, because you really want to have that extra, that extra life. If you are able to collect, if you're already one creature and Widget collects another token for the same creature, he evolves again into a stage 2 of that creature. That can take 3 hits. 3 hits before losing a life. Also, something else that's unique in this game. You are also graded in this game as you go through the game. Every stage, you're given a grading scale of C to S, with S being the best rank possible. So, It doesn't do anything as far as the actual gameplay mechanic, but it's just kind of like, a measure stick of the game telling you, okay, you did this well, there's room for improvement. So, like, those people who really, those people who are going to master the game and whatnot, there's incentive to go back and play the game and see if you can get the S rank for all the stages. So, there's some pretty unique ideas this platform release. They tried, because platformers are probably one of the genres that it's most cookie cutter. This genre and fighting games also, I think. There's a lot of Me Too games that are. So I always appreciate a game like this that tries different things at least to make it up in the pack. So
there's always going to be a Me Too game.
Oh yeah, of course, but So the actual gameplay itself, George. I know you're not a big platformer fan, but did you have any fun playing this? Was the unique stuff I just talked about unique enough for you to keep it interesting at least?
I was interested in seeing what all the power-ups are and all the different forms you can get. And I thought the enemies were actually kind of interesting too.
Yeah, exactly. Level design of this game's pretty good, I thought.
Other than playing it for the podcast, I think I had some kind of incentive to kind of keep playing to see what else I would see.
Yeah, it's not an overly long game. It's about an hour long. It's about an hour to go through the game. So typical platformer stage. Some of the power-ups some of the power-ups he can get in this game are very cool. So some very unique creatures. There is a story in this game. It's it's a pretty generic story, but it captures the theme of the cartoon. Each stage is kind of its own standalone story that eventually all come together to connect in an overarching plot. But each story in each stage is kind of typical of an episode of a cartoon. So
right.
Pretty much the same theme matter that you might see the cartoon and whatnot. So game mechanics are pretty good. I thought the game handled well. George, you have any problems with the controller?
Not really.
Yeah, Widget can stop on a dime. Jumping's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it was pretty solid.
Yeah. So, definitely better than the NES game, because I played the NES game a little bit too to compare it, and that game's much more sloppier its mechanics, outside of the bugs that the game has, of course, but...
Sounds about right.
Widget also looks better in this version of the game. In this version of the game, is stupid, silly grin look on his face the whole game, but, at least in this game...
He doesn't have that in this game?
No, he doesn't. So,
okay.
He looks more... I almost want to say he looks more serious in this game, but if that's such a thing for an alien creature. But
he was annoyed that the last game wasn't so great.
Yeah, exactly. Graphics. The graphics in this game are very good, I thought. They're very, I looked a little bit at the cartoon show as well, and the graphics fit the overall theme of the cartoon. They're very cartoonish, their look. Bright, colorful, good detailed objects. No problems there. What do you think about the music, George?
The music. I always forget the music for every game we play. But I remember being like, this music's pretty cool, actually. This is good.
Yeah.
For, going around levels, and it certainly was. I don't remember it being bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good music.
There is music out there that's just they even try, but in this game, it's actually pretty good. There's definitely a lot of effort put into the music.
Right.
And it gives you a nice ambiance to what's going on.
Yep. Yep, exactly. I feel the same way. Good graphics, good music. Of course, the game's cutting edge, either way. But for what's here, it's very impressive. So
yeah.
But yeah. Difficulty of the game is pretty good. I thought it was a bit easy, but then of course I also give it but then of course I was like, keep in mind this game was like meant for kids, so.
I was actually able to get decently far.
Well, good for you then.
Thanks.
But yeah, I thought the only there's a couple of jump areas that are kind of difficult to make with some trial and errors, and some of the boss stages. Some of the boss fights are pretty tough, I thought, but
yeah, there's some areas where it's like, how the heck do I get up there? And then you gotta like run around and, oh wait, this is a thing I can bounce on, and then you gotta bounce up and follow the platform, and
yeah,
there are a couple areas like that.
You also need to be mutated into certain creatures to get through certain areas too. So
yes, that too.
Yep. So there's also that. So, yeah. Yep. The boss fights are some of the most challenging part of the game, though. I thought, pretty good. Like pretty cool enemies. From what I understand, the enemies, most of the enemies in this game are taken from the cartoon. So so that's cool. There's also mention of Widget's sidekick, Mega Brain, who's also from the cartoon. So at least they made an effort to like incorporate like elements of cartoon like this game. Obviously, some of those aspects are going to go over my head because I'm not familiar with the cartoon that much. But
right,
what I could tell, they did make an effort at least to incorporate the cartoon like in the game. So it wasn't total cash grab.
Well, there you go. They put effort into it.
But yeah. So yeah. Overall, George, understand that you're not really like a platformer lover. How'd you compare this game to the platformers that we played so far? For the podcast.
This one's pretty good. There's a lot of different like not power-ups, but like there's a lot of different power states. I don't know. There's a lot of different like forms you can take.
Right. Yep.
And I don't think the game is like way too overly difficult, but I think honestly like anyone can really play this game even without really knowing the source material.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. There are a decent amount of games out there where it's like, you kind of need to know the source material or know it to like really get anything out of it, and so on and so forth. But I didn't really feel that with this game.
Yeah. Yep. You definitely agree. Yeah, this is like a pretty good platformer. Like overall, I thought. What I thought. Like, obviously they're aiming at kids. But for what the game is, it's still pretty. Like even today, I think this game's still pretty like good, like kid-friendly. Kid-friendly platformer. Anybody enjoys. Yeah, anybody enjoys classic retro games. This is like a pretty good game for like kids to play, like for like old school 2D platformer, platformer game. So,
right.
So there's not really a lot out there, out there in the game, because this is kind of, as mentioned before, the cartoon's an old cartoon at this point. It was like the cartoon was semi-popular. The game itself did not have a big print run. A lot of people would go so far as to call it a hidden gem on the system. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but definitely is.
I wouldn't either, but
the game definitely has a cult following. Like you look online, like like videos of the game on YouTube or message discussion boards or whatnot. And they're filled with people who basically, and they're filled with like positive comments of the game, just basically basically saying like wow, I love this game as a kid, like it's nostalgia trip, very good game, blah blah blah, stuff like blah, stuff like those lines. And yeah, I can see it. I mean, this game is a very especially if you were, especially if like you're watching the cartoon as a kid. This game they tried to aim this game squarely at like kids who knew the source material, and they succeeded. I mean, you wouldn't have the nostalgia or the affection for this game if it didn't resonate with target audience when it came out. So yeah, the developers obviously I'm sure they don't care about this game now at this point, but The developers still can feel proud. Can feel proud that 25 years later, people still have like fond memories of this game. So
I think they can be proud for a lot of other games they made.
Yeah, I mean, Japanese companies are very tight to the vest with development information about who made games and whatnot. So, well, until recently that is.
In this era, they definitely were.
Right. So, there's not very much information out there as to who actually developed this game, but yeah, I mean, Atlas is a very good company. They have a good track record. Most of their games. Even a game you might call shovelware like this is, based upon a great existing property.
This is not shovelware. Shovelware is like
no, right?
Yeah, garbage games that were made cheaply to make a quick buck.
Which is what many games.
Prime examples are on PS2 and Wii.
Oh yeah, exactly. But but a lot of games based off of licensed properties are shovelware because the developer gets the contract like the publisher to develop a game and they're like, yeah, we really don't care. We need to make this to pay the bills.
Yeah.
But no, this game actually rises above that. You can tell they put some love into this game. There definitely is some effort to make it a solid game and try to stay faithful to source material.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so not really. So like I said before, not really a lot out there in the game. I could not find any contemporary reviews. Most reviews of the game now are pretty positive. The game overall has an average rating of like 3.3 3 out of 5 stars. So, decent for a platformer.
Yeah.
The prices for this game, though, are very curious, though, because it's like there's we see in this game a weird blending of the two pricing phenomenon that you and I have seen, George, before on this podcast, a podcast we do together. Some games are very rare. Some games got small print runs, but they're well thought of, so those games go for like mad amounts of money these days. Other games, even they have like small print runs, nobody really cares about the game, so you can get the game for cheap. This game is a weird blending of those two genres in the sense that if you want the game for cart, it's very cheap. If you want the game complete, be prepared to break out the wallet. So, I've never really seen these two phenomenon blend in this way before. It's very interesting. So, let me explain what I mean. eBay. There's not a lot of copies of this game available for sale or sold. I mean, you can find the game if you want it. You just don't have a ton of choices for it. When I looked at it recently, there were 16 copies of the game currently listed on there, with 8 copies of the game that recently sold. So like I said, selection, but not like a huge amount out there. Card only, like I said before. Carts in this game are pretty cheap. You can get a cart shipping price included. They sold anywhere recently $13 to $18.
Wow.
So, yeah, pretty cheap. I mean, $13 this game's worth that. Like I think, that seems like a fair price.
Yeah.
But CIB though, however, this is where this is definitely collectors only. Collectors only gonna make you cry, that kind of stuff. Because there were no copies of this game that recently sold on eBay. I had to use other sites, as well as looking at what people were asking for the game CIB now on eBay listings to try to get an idea for what this game has sold for in the past for CIB pricing, which varies wildly. It sold anywhere from $100 to $300.
Wow.
So not many copies of this out there complete. I am not surprised to see a factory sealed copy of this that sold recently, because rarish games seem to pop up more often for factory sealed conditions.
Right.
Probably because collectors realized back then that the game was not going to have a big print run, so they ported it away or whatnot. So, the sealed copy of this game sold for $359.
Wow.
And then also one other thing I found, and also one other interesting example of this game that's sold recently. We've mentioned this before in past podcasts, but it's been a while since I've actually seen an example turn up. These games are shipped out to retailers like what was called a shipping box or shipping, basically. How many games per box varied upon the console. It was typical for Super NES games to be included stick to a box. And that included like both PAL and North America lands. Just to get an example, George, you may have heard about the story. Somebody last year, I think it was, actually located a shipping box of Stadium event games. They're
yeah, I remember that.
Right. So, which is like mad amounts of money. So
yeah.
There are collectors out there who really prize these boxes because because it's like the pristine bragging rights, I have 6 sealed pristine copies of this game sealed away in this box, kind of like thing. So, there actually was shipping box, the Super Widget carts out there that sold recently. Even more curious, it was for the PAL version of the game, which is even rarer than the North American version.
Right.
So I was very interested to see this. If you break it down, if you break the price down by each copy of the game sealed, what this sold for is actually like a pretty fair price. This sold for $1,420.
Jeez.
But so divide that by 6, you're looking at about $220 each. So as far as sealed copies go, not bad. But I've not seen a sealed shipping box sold for one of our games in this podcast for a long time. So I definitely wanted to mention this one. So not every game out there has shipping boxes, but for those that do exist, collectors are very prize them. So
right.
So in conclusion, I definitely can understand why Daniel loved this game as a kid. It's a very well put together, competent, very cutesy kids aimed platformer game. That seems like it does a good idea of seeking source material. So no real major problems to this game that I had. I think the only complications being, as I mentioned before, certain areas of the game you have to be a certain form to get through, and some of the boss fights are very difficult. But outside those aggravations, which to be fair, many platformers have. It's a very solid game. I mean, I don't have any particular love for this game, but I definitely understand why people who did play it back then certainly think fondly of it. It's a very competent, well put together platformer.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you want to add anything else to? You add anything else to that, George? Or
I don't know what else to say. I mean, you basically said it all. It was a pretty interesting game.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely went back to time where it's they really don't do too many licensed games anymore these days, or I should say most licensed games these days are restricted to mobile games. So I mean, as far as console / PC games, there are pretty few of our between these days. For various reasons. Maybe people always associate them with shovelware crap and just stop buying them even good games, or maybe because licensing rights have gotten too expensive. So could be numerous reasons for it.
No idea.
So, but anyway, so we want to thank Daniel again very much for recommending this game, and also backing us Patreon. Hopefully you're happy with the coverage we gave this game. I also apologize. It took over 3 months, for us to get this game in the rotation, but we will cover everybody's Patreon picks eventually, if you submit them. So, And if you would like to suggest a game or be back high enough to demand a game for this podcast, you can head over to www.patreon.com/the SNES podcast and join us on there. For as little as $1 a month, you are able to get early access to episodes, and the $5 level allows you to be able to dictate a game for the podcast. So, like this point, I'd like to thank Chad, Richard, Sivan, and a special welcome. Thank you for joining us. Message to David and Corey. So thank you again very much, everybody out there for backing us. We very much appreciate it.
Yeah, seriously, thank you.
If you wish to talk to us directly, we have a Facebook group. Please feel free to give us comments, suggestions, games out there, etc. Or you can also email me directly if you want to. The email we use for this is the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com, and we're also available on iTunes. Where a rating review very much appreciate it. George, how about you? Where can the good people contact you at?
Well, if you like using Twitter, that's a thing. You can talk to me there. My handle is @_Derpkin_. That is @_DERPKITTEN_, and that's about it.
Okay then. For our next game on this podcast, we're off to George's pick, and once again, George is getting a Japanese game for us to look at.
Yes, it's a Mario Picross game, and the name is, I'll pull it up here right now if I can find it. It's actually a simple name. I don't know why I can't remember it.
Now,
Mario no Super Picross.
Now, some of the Picross games did come out here in the West, didn't they?
Not at this time, no.
Well,
as far as I understand, the Picross games started coming out probably like DS era.
Okay, yep. Yeah, because I was gonna say, I know some of them have come out here eventually here in the West. So, it just took a while. So, no, I didn't realize Picross. I didn't realize the Picross franchise went all the way back to Super NES days. So,
even before that, Game Boy.
Oh, Game Boy. Okay. Well,
yeah.
Well, Game Boy and Super NES were pretty contemporary systems. Game Boy came out 2 years with Super NES. So, but a lot of overlap between the systems. But yeah. So I mean, it's I've never played it. I've never played a Picross game. So this should be interesting.
Yes, it will.
But hey, it's got Mario in it. How bad can the game be, right?
Okay.
Well,
we'll see if you get frustrated with this game or not.
Well, if Nintendo made the game, it's probably like well solid with good use of Mario. It's when Mario.
Picross is decently difficult.
Yeah. It's when Mario gets licensed out to third-party companies that's like, yeah. But yeah. So.
Are you telling me Mario Teaches Typing isn't good?
I've never played the game, so I can't comment on it. But I actually like Hotel Mario though, like going off the beaten track. But but anyway, this is why Nintendo's this is one reason why Nintendo's very possessive about their properties these days. So, but anyway, So please feel free to check us out again. Like I said, on Facebook or Patreon. We look forward to seeing you again next episode of this podcast. Closing thoughts. Good for Widget being kind of like ahead of its day. With the environmental friendly, a message for kids. So, I'm not sure when Captain Planet came out, but I'm pretty sure this cartoon that predated that.
Eat your vegetables and you'll grow up strong.
Yep. Take care, everybody. As always, I appreciate it, and have a good one.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power. Deep power.